Welcome to Cinema Bites, your go-to for movie recaps in a flash. Big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. The movie Prisoner of War kicks off with a skilled, professional British pilot named James Wright. He's inside a Japanese kung fu school, asking about a certain person whose picture is hanging up. The students there didn't like his questions and were about to surround and beat him up, but their teacher told them to hold off until he hears James's story. The teacher tells him that the guy he's asking about is actually his father and his master, and that now he's the one running the kung fu school. He also tells him that his dad talked about him a lot, especially that time James used an illegal move to beat his dad in a fight. That's why he's decided to get revenge for his father. Suddenly, he orders his students to attack, and the fight breaks out. James Wright is standing in the middle, ready to take them all on by himself. He breaks the first guy's neck, the second guy's arm, grabs the third and throws him to the ground. They all get scared of him. Suddenly, the teacher stops the fight before James kills anyone and asks him why he's here. James says, "Let me tell you," and we flash back in time. We see James flying his plane in 1942 over the Philippine Islands. Another plane is chasing him, and unfortunately, it manages to shoot him down. He immediately opens the hatch, jumps out with his parachute, and lands in the sea along with his co-pilot. Sadly, the co-pilot lands dead. Still, James refuses to leave him and drags him to shore. He sees the rest of his squadron going down one by one. The next day, Japanese soldiers start searching for any survivors or bodies of the British pilots. They find James's friend's body and also discover a mine James had planted, but it doesn't go off. What they didn't expect is that James was hiding, distracts them with a rock, sneaks up from behind, and stabs the first guy in the head with his knife. Before the second even knows what's happening, James slits his throat, then double kicks him onto a mine, blowing him to pieces. Unfortunately, the explosion gives away James's position, and all the soldiers surround him. Since they're too many and armed, James decides to surrender. The group leader orders him to get on his knees, toss his knife, and puts a pistol to his head, about to kill him, but changes his mind at the last second and decides to take him prisoner instead. When they reach the camp, James meets the camp commander, who realizes he's a British pilot and tells him he's the only survivor from his squadron. He says, "You'll join your friends," and orders the Japanese soldiers to execute him. They take him far away to finish him off. One of them tells him to get on his knees, draws his samurai sword, and comes up behind him to behead him. But James waits for the right moment, pulls his head back to dodge the sword, and suddenly attacks the commander, knocking him down. In a split second, he attacks the first soldier, stabs him in the chest, quickly grabs the knife, cuts the ropes off his hands, and throws it at a distant guard. Before their boss can get up, James grabs his sword and stabs him in the chest. But once again, the Japanese soldiers spot him and chase after him. While running, James sees a plane covered with tree branches and leaves. He memorizes the spot but keeps running. Unfortunately, he falls into a trap, drops his knife, and can't escape. Bad luck. He gets caught again and brought back to the camp commander. When the commander finds out James killed his men single-handedly, he's shocked. He stands in front of James, takes his ID and medals, and realizes James is the leader of the British squadron. He tells James, "You know the man you killed was like a brother to me." He tells him to get some rest because he's going to die tomorrow. After he leaves, the commander's assistant asks if he should kill James right away, but the commander says no, he'll die tomorrow in combat. They take James from the commander's tent to the cell. That night, two other prisoners are thrown in with him. They introduce themselves. One is the bearded guy, and the other is a U.S. Army sergeant. They tell James they have a leader here named Captain Collins. They explain that the Japanese keep prisoners who can work in this camp and that there's no way off the island. Anyone who leaves the camp just ends up back here unless they're sent on the death march. That's a 60-kilometer trek to another camp, and almost everyone dies on the way. No one knows what happens to those who survive. The next day, James wakes up to the sound of Japanese soldiers training and learns that the camp commander is named Ito, and that harsh training is how he punishes his men. Soon, they bring James out and stand him in front of a soldier with a sword. Instead of beheading him, they untie his ropes. Two soldiers hold him up and take him to the fighting arena. Ito brings out 3 soldiers who were being punished and tells James they were caught stealing extra food and need to be made an example of. Then he calls in another tough, well-trained soldier and orders him to fight them. The tough soldier knocks the first guy out with a single blow, lifts him off the ground, and slams him down. He goes after the other 2, breaks one's fingers and punches him in the face, throws the other to the ground, and keeps punching him until he passes out. When the first one tries to escape, the guards throw him back into the ring, and the tough soldier knocks him out beside the others. After that, Ito orders a fight to the death between James and the tough soldier. James enters the ring, and as soon as the tough guy attacks, James lands a kick to his chest, knocking him down. Then, with all his anger, James punches the tough guy hard on the head, killing him. Ito gets furious, storms out, and goes to his tent. The commander's assistant follows him in, urging him to kill James immediately, but Ito refuses, saying James is a fierce fighter and must die in combat. Meanwhile, Gabriel introduces James to Captain Collins, who we learn has a permanent leg injury from shrapnel. Collins asks James where he learned to fight, and James says he grew up in Hong Kong and learned martial arts there. While they're talking, Japanese soldiers come in and take James back to Ito's tent. James is surprised to see a foreign nurse there, but Ito sends her away as soon as James enters. Ito tells James he knows his fighting style, which is one of the most forbidden martial arts in the world. He asks James if his father was a war hero. James replies, yes. Ito says his own father was also a war hero, takes his sword, slashes James across the face, and tells him to rest up, because tomorrow he'll die. The next day, James wakes up to loud chanting. He and his fellow prisoners are brought outside, and James enters the ring alone, surprised to find himself facing 3 soldiers, and they all rushed him. But James fought back hard, breaking their bones with every hit, dropping them all to the ground. Suddenly, the 3 of them got back up and started hitting him, so he grabbed their legs, knocked them down, then went after the 3rd guy and took him down too. He charged at one of them and finished him off, and when the 2nd guy attacked, James hit him with everything he had and threw him out of the ring. In the end, he grabbed one of them and was about to kill him, but let him go when he saw Ito watching. Ito realized James was a fierce fighter, got up, and went into his tent. When Collins saw James come in, he asked him about the soldier he let go, and James said, he's just a soldier, not at fault. Ito is the one giving the orders to fight. That's why I didn't kill him. But just a moment later, the 3 soldiers were executed right in front of him, and James understood that Ito doesn't accept defeat. Anyway, James started thinking about escaping during the march, but he needed a radio to contact his forces. He found out from his mates that there was a radio device in one of the towers, so he decided to steal it. The next day, he and his friends caused trouble in the camp to distract the guards, and he used the chance to sneak up, steal a wire from the tower, and get back down. The nurse saw him escaping, but strangely, she didn't tell the guards. He hid the wire and the supplies and took it back to the tent. At night, he talked to Boy and told him he wanted to escape before the march. Boy said he spoke Japanese and could help with the plan. James said, great, I need you to listen to what the Japanese are saying on the radio so we can figure out their locations and camps. Then contact our forces and let them know where we are. The next morning, 2 prisoners were executed for trying to escape. James saw their escape route and saw an opportunity. He went to one of them and asked about how they escaped, and the guy explained everything. So James decided to risk his life and try that way. He slipped out through a secret spot in the cell, made it look like he was still in bed, then snuck past the guards and managed to get out of the camp and ran into the jungle. At the same time, there was a search of his cell, and the guard who checked it realized he was gone but didn't say anything, just looked at Boy and left. By then, James had made it to the coast, turned on the radio and started hearing a lot of talk in a strange language. He ran back to the plane he'd memorized the location of, then snuck back into camp the same way and got back into his cell. The next day, James's friends asked what he saw, and he told them the waters around them were full of Japanese and Filipinos. But he also heard Americans nearby on the radio, speaking in Navajo code. Collins told him, that's the language they used at the start of the war, but it's encrypted. No one can understand it unless they're trained. Then James told them about the plane he'd seen, saying it was a glider and needed a runway to take off. So if they wanted to escape, they'd have to build a runway out of wooden beams. They all agreed and decided to help him. Right then, Ito summoned James and asked, what do you know about the Navajo language? James said he didn't know anything about it, didn't understand it at all. Ito asked, do you know Japanese? James said, I don't know that either. Ito got angry and told him, anyway, you and your friends will never see your homeland again. James replied, before I go, I'll keep fighting your men one by one until I wipe them all out. Then he left. Ito got furious and smashed the table with his hands. When his lieutenant asked why he let James stay, he said, I'm hearing Navajo everywhere on the radio, which means the Americans are close and planning an attack, plus the British are looking for James. He's a wild card for me. The next day, the soldiers tied James up with ropes. Ito came out of his tent and sat in front of him while the soldiers started beating James with all they had. Ito just sat there, stone-faced, and the beating went on until James collapsed to his knees. They untied him, left one of them to keep hitting him, but James grabbed the stick from him and hit him in the face, then attacked the rest, taking them down one by one until only Sandal was left. Sandal fought James fiercely, but James managed to knock him down and choke him with the stick. Still, he refused to kill him. He looked at Ito, and suddenly Ito's lieutenant hit James in the face with the butt of his rifle, knocking him down, then yelled at the soldiers, calling them weak and cowards. Ito was furious, got up, and shot 5 prisoners with his pistol. He looked at James and said, this is just the beginning. James passed out. When he woke up, he realized he'd been unconscious for 2 days, and the nurse was treating him. She told him this was the first time a prisoner had survived here. James asked her name and why she was here. She told him her name was Teresa, that she was a prisoner too, and had been here for 3 months, and that there was no way to escape, so he shouldn't try. He said, I have a plan. She was about to ask about the plan when a soldier came in and kicked her out. At night, James woke to the sound of gunfire and found Ito next to him. He asked asked what was happening. Ito said, "Don't worry, just some prisoners trying to escape. My men are handling it. You've got a new challenge tomorrow." James asked, "What will you do when your men are gone? Should I kill your lieutenant? Or you?" Suddenly they heard artillery fire. James said, "Ito, you should be worried. They're getting close." Ito replied, "I need to know what they're saying in Navajo, and you should worry too. If they get here, no one's getting out alive." After that, James returned to his cell and found his friends with a note saying the Americans wouldn't allow POWs to be treated brutally. He learned that a helicopter had dropped these notes all over the island, and his friends had picked some up. That night, Gabriel and James left the cell again, killed a Japanese guard who saw them, then kidnapped the guard who had covered for James last time and refused to kill him, telling him, "I'll let you go, but you have to help us." The guard covered for them again, and they quickly snuck back to their cell. Suddenly, Japanese soldiers came in to search the cell after discovering their comrade's body, but all the prisoners were there and everything seemed fine. The next morning, the Japanese soldiers tortured Collins. Ito asked him, "Who was with you when you killed the guard?" James spoke up, admitting he did it to cover for Collins, but Ito said Collins was caught red-handed, brought in another prisoner, and told James, "I want to see you kill him the forbidden way, or I'll kill Collins." James refused, so Ito got angry and killed the prisoner in front of him, then had the soldiers attack Collins and beat him up. But Collins fought back, beating the soldiers brutally and even biting one of them on the neck. He fought them off, then cornered the other two and kept beating them until he smashed up the hut with them. Then the soldiers showed up and stopped him. After a while, James was summoned to Ito's tent. Ito told him, "You're prisoners of war, and you should be treated by the rules of war." But Ito replied, "From now on, anything that happens in my camp is by my orders." They realized James was only kept here for Ito's entertainment. So James said, "How about you get in the ring with me, so we can see who's stronger?" Ito stood up, ordered his soldiers to tie James up, gave him a headbutt to the face, and told him, "Don't get into a fight you can't win." James challenged him again, and as they were dragging him out, he called Ito a coward. Once outside, James agreed with Gabriel to carry out their plan tonight. They picked a meaningless word, hoping the American forces would figure out that prisoners were in trouble and calling for help. That night, they executed the plan. Gabriel repeated the word several times, and suddenly, it was repeated back from the other side. They were overjoyed. They told them they were 6 stars, with an eagle, no engine, and in a bright light. It was a code between them. When Gabriel and James returned, they found no one in the cell, so they quickly hid the radio. Suddenly, Japanese soldiers burst in and beat them until they passed out. The next morning, they found themselves tied up with the sound of airplanes overhead. Suddenly, Teresa and another woman came to untie them. She told them Allied planes were above. Ito had gone mad, and he was killing everyone he saw. She gave them a dagger, and they all ran out to get the radio. Outside, it was a massacre. Ito had ordered his soldiers to kill all the prisoners. When James reached the radio, he found it broken, so they ran again. Teresa grabbed a knife, pretended to be wounded, and managed to kill the soldier in front of her with her companion. Wright and Gabriel climbed to the watchtower, and Gabriel quickly called for backup before the rest of their friends could be killed. He told them over the radio he'd mark their location with a flare so they could find them. At the same time, Bowie was tied up, about to be killed, but James quickly killed the guard behind him. Chaos broke out, and gunfire erupted everywhere. Bowie grabbed the knife and went berserk, killing the soldiers one after another. Teresa escaped with the other nurse and a prisoner. Meanwhile, Gabriel ran into Ito's lieutenant as he was escaping, and a fierce fight broke out. The lieutenant was like a ninja and overpowered Gabriel, knocking him to the ground and almost killing him. But Collins showed up just in time and got into a brutal fight with the lieutenant. He grabbed the knife from the ground and tried to break his arm, but Collins tackled him, threw him to the ground, and punched him so hard he knocked out a row of his teeth. Collins was about to kill him with the knife when suddenly a soldier shot him, and unfortunately, Collins died before he could kill the lieutenant, collapsing next to him. James then entered Ito's tent and told him, "There's nowhere left to run." Ito replied, "Who said I'm the one running?" He threw James a sword, grabbed his own, secured the tent, and a fierce duel began. Both were strong, blocking and landing quick blows, but with a single move, James managed to take Ito's sword and attacked to finish him off. But Ito dodged, and the sword got stuck. Ito quickly pulled out his pistol, but James grabbed it away, attacked him, and kept beating him until Gabriel ran in, grabbed James, and said, "Let's go, there's no time." They both escaped, but a Japanese soldier was aiming at them, about to shoot. Despite Ito's defeat, he refused to shoot James, just looked at him with regret as he escaped. Gabriel gathered the remaining prisoners at the plane and sent out a distress call. They fired the flare, and the planes locked onto their location. James started preparing the rope and tied it to the glider so the rescue plane could pull them out. Suddenly, Japanese soldiers attacked with weapons, but before they could shoot, the support planes wiped them out. The rescue plane swooped down, grabbed the rope, and pulled the glider up off the ground. Everyone was overjoyed. Gabriel checked them all in, and James looked at the others, promising he'd come back to free the rest. Then we jump to the present. We see James standing in front of Ito's son, telling him, That's my whole story. So, where's your father? The son reveals his father died last year. James offers his condolences and starts to leave, but Ito's son calls him back and says, I want to fight you. James replies, you asked for it. They start fighting. Ito's son tries to attack James with all his might, but can't land a single blow. James keeps hitting him left, right, up, and down until he knocks him to the ground. He calls out, show me the forbidden strike. James gathers his strength in his fists and stops the blow just before it hits the son's face. The force is so great, it makes his hair fly. The son stands up, hands him the medals his father took from James, and says, these belong to you. My father once said that someday a man would come, and I should give him these medals. James takes them, they salute each other, and part ways. That's how our movie ends. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our movie recaps.